Attention! Attention! You are listening to a pre-recorded episode of The Curious Realm. Curious Realm is busy traveling the vast void of time and space to find the best paradigm-changing content the universe has to offer. Enjoy the following transmission, and remember, stay curious. Coming to you from the City of the Weird. Exploring topics from the esoteric and unexplored to dimensions unknown. Shining a light of truth on the darkest corners of our reality. Welcome to the Curious Realm. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of The Curious Realm. We have had a great growth path since the rebrand from Dudes and Beer, guys. It's still actually stuck in my head frequently to whenever my wife mentions something, I'm like, oh, throw it on the Dudes and Beer group. And she kind of gives me the funny look, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. It's Curious Realm now. But it's been great. It's been fantastic. We just went through our first South by is Curious Realm. Thank you to all the technicians out there that killed it for HC Productions this year. Our first real South by to be out there providing for, and man, what a South by it was. Shows like the Black Pumas that we got to help provide video people for, stuff like that. Always great to be involved in such an epic event. Welcome back to that, and welcome back the world of live events in this world, what I do for a living. And speaking of live events, our second guest this evening is actively the folks from the upcoming Bigfoot Roadshow. Southeast Texas Bigfoot is who is putting that on. That is coming to you from Mineola, Texas. We are one of the many sponsors of that, as is our parent network, HC Universal Network. We will both be out there providing live stream commentary with the speakers, the guests that are out there, as well as some of the amazing vendors. There's a guy that has been out there, Daniel out of Houston, that, or I guess Sugarland, Houston, who is doing like action figures of cryptozoology folks. I know Lauren Coleman has one, Lyle Blackburn has one made. He just did one of the folk monster that's going to be up for auction at the upcoming Texas Folk Monster Festival. And can't wait to be out there for that. But stop on by Eventbrite, folks. Check that out. You can buy your own tickets there. They're going to have a great banquet the first night. We are going to be out there providing some great stuff, some great coverage out in Mineola, Texas. You could not get more Southeast Texas than that. So stop on by, check it out. Eventbrite is where you can get those tickets. We will be having links to all of that on our Curious Realm page. Make sure to stop on by, check that out. And also stop on by and check out the Curious Realm on Facebook. That is where we post all of the articles that we talk about in the news of the week. Out of Military News, 131daily.com, death rays coming soon. Japan is building microwave weapons, and of course we all know these already exist. That's part of what the whole Havana syndrome is about. Out of unionbulletin.com, Jesse Smollett's lawyers request protective custody while he is in jail. Also, out of Coast to Coast AM, our good friends over there, NASA photographs the Starfleet logo on the surface of Mars. That is one of my favorite articles I've seen in a while. Really cool just big geographic formation out there that looks just like it. Pretty wild. Of course, we just recently had Archbishop James Cloud on and Kathleen Marden on. Fantastic episode there. Also, make sure to go on by and register for the MUFON Symposium. That is another show that we are sponsoring this year. Cannot wait to go to Denver and be a part of that. Stop on by and check all of that out. Apparently, news break, Putin has already deployed a chemical weapon in Salisbury. So go on by, check that out. Join the Curious Realm group on Facebook. Join the conversation. That's where we post all of that great stuff. Our guest today in the first segment, Kris Sumner from the historic Scott County Jail, as well as Soul Sisters Paranormal and the Jailhouse Informant podcast. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing, Kris?
I am fantastic, Chris. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Kris.
Thanks for having me back.
I've been looking forward
excited.
to doing that, oddly. Happy belated birthday, by the way. I know you just had a birthday. How was that?
It was great. I just had a great day. I got to spend it with my best friend, Miranda. And
Nice.
We actually went down and we were touring some different museums because we just opened our own, as you know. And so we were touring some different museums that day. We stopped by the Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum, which was a lot of fun. So, yeah, we've been able to do a lot of stuff. So it was a great birthday, had a lot of fun, got a lot of well wishes from family and friends. So I really do appreciate all of that.
Oh, absolutely. And, I have been really excited. Whenever we had you on last time, you were just closing things with the historic Scott County Jail, getting ready to start building the museum. I would love to put you in contact with one of our other guests, Craig Woolheater out of Texas here, who is helping build the Texas Bigfoot Museum, just to kind of get some ideas, museum owner to museum owner. Some newfangled ways to get these exhibits across to people, to get the message of a museum, especially a historic site museum like yours. Let's get into a little bit about the renovation and what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually a labor of love between myself and my business partner, Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. So she and I met about 3 years ago. And ever since then, we've really talked about trying to find a historic location that we could open as a museum to preserve the history of that location, as well as offer paranormal research. And so really what we did is we came together and we formed a company called History, Highways, and Haunts. And the historic Scott County Jail in Huntsville, Tennessee, really became our first location in that endeavor. And so it's a jail that was built in 1904. It was in operation until 2008. And it really has this unique presence. It looks like a castle here in the middle of East Tennessee. And it just has, like I said, this presence when you roll up on it. And what we wanted to do, as I said before, is really preserve the historical component of that. And so in September of last year, we officially opened, and we have a very robust museum for day tours. So you can come in and really tour what it was like here in Scott County as far as crime and punishment. You can obviously tour through the cells and see what those look like, both our trustee cells and our maximum security cells. We've got a law enforcement appreciation room where we honor all of those who wear the badge. And we have just a vast array of displays that really revolve around crime and punishment and history here in Scott County. So we offer those during the day, and then at night we have flashlight tours. We have after dark events that we hold. We have, we allow paranormal researchers to come in and rent the jail for the evening to do paranormal research and investigations. So we do different things like that, and we're just having a ball with it so far.
And that is fantastic. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on, like I said, in our pre-interview conversation, Kris, is the fact of Soul Sisters Paranormal has been going so well that is actively what is keeping the lights on over at the Scott County Jail project. And that is absolutely incredible, because so many times paranormal groups start up, they get together, it's a collaboration of people, but it's almost like so many podcasts that start up that after 10 episodes experience pod fizzle, and they realize that, like, whoa, wait a minute, this seems like something really cool to do in your spare time, but dude, there's real work involved with this. Like, there is real work involved with paranormal investigation. It becomes a part-time job before it becomes a full-time one. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to clarify, it's not what we're doing with Soul Sisters that's really keeping the lights on. It's those teams that are coming in to investigate the jail.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like I said, it's kind of an interesting dynamic because Miranda has her paranormal investigation is under Ghost Biker Exploration. So that's her and that's her team. Then myself from Soul Sisters. And we collaborated to make this History, Highways, and Haunts an actual company. So when we allow paranormal investigators to come in and investigate the jail, that is really what's keeping the lights on. And those teams that are coming in here, one, they are extremely fascinated by, one, the paranormal, but two, really what we call paranormal research, right? They're not just here to go in and get a scare or be in a creepy building after dark. You know, since we've opened in September, we've had 20 teams come in and do investigations here. Yeah, we've got, and then this month is booked, next month is booked. So, and they're all teams that, as I said, are extremely interested in paranormal research and really getting in here and talking to our spirits, communicating with our spirits. Miranda and I are also actively engaged in a very cool paranormal research study that we're doing here. And what that entails is we're allowing paranormal investigation teams, when they book the location, we've got an object that was donated to us by a detective who worked here in the jail, and we don't even know what the item is. He put it in a very specialized container. And so when paranormal investigators come in, they're allowed to sit with this item and they can ask questions. They can use dowsing rods, EDI box, REM pods, whatever they want to use. They just can't record it either through video or audio, but they can have this item for their entire session or an hour, however they want to sit with this item. And we're trying to get the jail and the spirits of the jail to tell those teams what is in this container. We know it's related to the jail and we know it's related to a murder, but other than that, we don't even know what's in the container. Only the detective knows. So while they're while the teams are sitting with this item, we're giving them some paper and we're asking them to write down what they hear, see, feel, smell, sense, and then they put that in an envelope, they seal it, they sign it, they date it, and then they put it in a lockbox. And at the end of May, we're going to sit down, Miranda and I are going to sit down with the detective, and he's going to open the lockbox and go through each of those envelopes and see if anything that those teams picked up is related to the item.
Wow.
And so it's really something that's very interesting because we're eliminating all of the bias surrounding this this paranormal research. And for us, it's unlike anything we've ever seen. So when I say we're actively engaged in paranormal research, that's really what we're doing here. Yeah,
that is actively a fantastic experiment. And what a great way to study the phenomenology of what's going on in the location. Now, you said that you've had 20 some odd teams come out already, which is amazing. Because like you said, y'all just opened in September. You had not opened yet when we had you on the show last time.
Correct.
And to know that there has been that kind of response, let's get into a little bit of the history of the Scott County Jail and why it might be such a hot spot that so many people are wanting to come and visit.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, it was built in 1904 and it was in operation as a functioning jail until 2005. After that, the inmates were moved out and it was used as a dispatch, a 911 dispatch for another 3 years. So in 2008, it officially closed. The doors were locked and it sat vacant until 2017. In 2017, the town of Huntsville acquired it from Scott County and they got a tourism grant to come in and repaint, put in some new windows, really kind of fix it up a little bit. And then after 2017, it sat vacant again until 2021 when Miranda and I approached the town of Huntsville and asked if we could open this museum and research center here. And they agreed. And it's really a great partnership between ourselves and the town of Huntsville. We've got a lot of community support from them. But it has such an interesting history. One, the longevity of it, obviously built in 1904. But we've had sheriffs that have been in front of the jail. We've had inmates who have committed suicide inside the jail, or have attempted suicide and have died at the hospital because of that attempt. We've had violence here due to overcrowding. We have stories of inmates upon inmate violence. In the early beginning, the jailer and his family actually lived here in the bottom floor of the jail. And so we actually have reports of children being born here. They played here with other kids. So you really got the entire scope of life happening inside this little building, inside this jail. And so what we think really contributes to the paranormal phenomena is a couple of things. One, the jail is built entirely of sandstone. The bricks are 3 feet by 5 feet by 6 feet. And so as we know, that type of material really holds in that energy. Also, there's a river that runs behind us, directly behind the jail. And obviously that water feature would also contribute to the energy that we think we have here. There's a Native American influence in this area, very strong Native American influence. And like I said, just the fact that we've had so many violent incidences here inside the jail. In 1925, Sheriff Ellis was killed right outside the front door.
Oh, wow.
We've had 7 inmates who were taken out of here by mobs and lynched, right? Either right behind the jail or about a half a mile away. So there's like I said, this very rich array of history starting in 1904, and we really do think that contributes to some of the paranormal phenomena that's been happening inside this jail.
Oh, absolutely, and I think it is phenomenal the fact that you guys have been able to not only pick up the restoration of this place, but turn it into a success locally. Mm-hmm. And even to the point of fact that y'all are listed. What I'm showing right now is like the Rotary website. Like this is like the Chamber of Commerce. Mm-hmm. And you guys are listed in there, history highways and haunts and stuff like that. So it's obviously one of those that y'all have endeared yourself to the city, to the town. They see the fact that you were actively trying to bring some highlight to the history of the place, and not just use it as a roadside attraction.
And thank you for noticing that. That's a great way to say that. When Miranda and I really sat down and decided we wanted to do this, I mean, we talked for probably at least 2 months. And even before we went and approached the town of Huntsville, we came up with what we felt was a very strong business plan. And that business plan really revolved around the fact that the forward-facing promotion and advertisement of what we're doing was really driven by the history. The historical component of the jail is really what we're trying to lead with. And so that has really guided our marketing strategy, our advertising strategy, our partner strategy. And so then we bring in the paranormal behind that. And as I said before, the paranormal has been very good because that's allowed us to keep the lights on, and we've built such a relationship within the community, both Miranda with Ghost Biker and myself with Soul Sisters. We've built such a great relationship with other members in our paranormal community that they've been very receptive to help us come in and really support us in this endeavor. So that has been really successful, and I just think the way we were able to come together with this and again allow the history to be the driving focus, because in this town and this county actually, you have almost every family has some type of connection to this jail, whether they had a family member who was in here as an inmate, or their grandpa was a deputy or a sheriff, or their mom was the cook. Almost every person from Scott County who has come into this jail has told us a story of, my so-and-so was in here for drunk and disorderly, or my dad was the jailer for this many years. And so those are really stories that we are gathering and really putting forth inside this museum. So it really is a community museum, because when you walk in here, we've got the names of all the sheriffs. We've got the names of the deputies. We've got newspaper articles from the 1960s and 70s that are highlighting the members of this community. And so, like I said, I think the fact that we were able to, what I think, very successfully marry the historical component as well as the paranormal component is really what's making this successful.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the fact also of my family comes from a very, very small town in Louisiana.
Okay.
Literal one red light town. My aunt was mayor at one point, and towns like that, towns that are small, the sheriff's office, the police station, that is it's basically like the sheriff's office, the barber shop, and the market. If you got a church that everybody's going to, you could throw the church in there too. But like that, if you want to go hear the gossip, go walk around the market. You know, go hang out at the barber shop. If you want to know what's really going on in town, hop on by and talk to the sheriff. He's sitting there. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, what you see, folks, on literally Andy Griffith is so much the truth in small town America.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the sheriff's office, the fact of like the sheriff was somebody who came out and dealt with the fact that your fence was down and 3 of your cattle mixed in with John's.
That's it exactly.
Like he was there as a different, it wasn't like the police, you know, and that's why sheriffs had tenure for 30, 40 years, things like that, you know, because they were such an ingrained part of the community. And the fact that y'all are bringing that back to life and highlighting that fact, I think once again goes to a big credit to you guys.
Well, thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And it's really been an amazing experience. You know, Miranda is just a phenomenal advertisement individual. She's got a great eye for marketing, a great eye for graphic design and stuff. So we've got a very robust gift shop, different branded items that are really unique to the jail. And it's just been, like I said, a very successful partnership in the fact that she's got that background. I've got a business background. And so it's just one of those things that, you know, because we sat down, we really did a pros and cons of both of our strengths and weaknesses and how we can make them work. It just has come together in such a very unique way, and one that I feel is extremely successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And shown so. I mean, just in the time that y'all have been putting this together and getting it together, the fact that y'all are organized enough to, in that time, have had over 20 groups come in and do investigation. What have you been privy to any of the results of those investigations?
Oh, absolutely. The only thing that we don't want results on right now is our paranormal research study.
Absolutely.
So we tell the teams, you know, we don't want to know anything. Just put it on the envelope and seal it. But no, and that's the great thing about this. You know, the jail, even when it was in existence as a jail, we had inmates here, deputies here, the sheriff here. There were reports of hauntings that were going on inside the jail.
Oh, wow.
In fact, we know of at least 3 inmates who requested to be transferred to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary because they were so they felt this jail was so eerie.
Wow.
We've had since we've been open, we've had inmates come in and say that during the night that they would see shadow figures. We had a former jailer, come in and take a day tour, and when he got up onto the 3rd floor, you could visibly see the arms the hair stand up on his arms, because he said, there was one night that a shadow figure chased me out of this 3rd floor. We had a deputy email us and say, you know, I don't believe in the paranormal, but there are things that happen in that jail. The elevator would start running on its own at night. We would hear footsteps when everybody was in their cells. We would hear footsteps on the back stairwell to the point where we would call an emergency head count because we thought they were escaping. Yeah. And so that was, I mean, that in and of itself is pretty phenomenal when you have these sworn law enforcement officers coming in and telling you this stuff. Yeah. But the paranormal teams that come in here, they've captured shadow figures. There's one team that actually videotaped a picture being flung off the wall, audible EVPs. We've had EVPs that have been recorded. It really runs the gamut. Shadow figures, even on our flashlight tours, when we have people in here that are just really interested in the history and not so much the paranormal, they're capturing shadow figures on the pictures that they're taking just of the flashlight tours. And so it's routine for things to happen in this jail day and night. And I think obviously that's what's contributing to our success as well. The spirits are just really vocal and really want their presence known. So that's definitely been a big help.
It didn't even dawn on me to ask, are you in the jail right now?
I am. I'm sitting here right now. I am. I'm sitting here in the jail right now. So if we hear something, don't be alarmed.
Yeah. Precisely. What is it like for you? Because I mean, there's some people that are really comfortable, despite that. You've been on hundreds of investigations by this point with Soul Sisters, and also working in conjunction, with Ghost Biker expeditions or explorations. But what is it like for you to spend your daily in that environment?
It's actually interesting. When you go to these places as an investigator, the docents will tell you stories, the volunteers will tell you stories about things moving and all of this. And you obviously got to take some of that with a grain of salt, right? They kind of want to sell you on their place.
Teaspoon.
But yeah. But, Kris, this place is legitimately for real. I mean, we've had objects go missing. For example, when we first got the keys, about a month and a half before we actually had our opening day. And because we wanted to get in here, really do a thorough cleaning and stuff like that. Yeah. And so upstairs on the second floor, there's the remnants of the dumbwaiter system that the cooks would use to send the food up to all three levels of the jail. And so Miranda was running her shop vac up underneath the ledge or the lip of the dumbwaiter system. And she knocked off a razor blade that had been taped up underneath there, like contraband, right? It's just this old razor blade that had been taped under there. Nobody knew it. So I wasn't here at the time. And so she called me and she said, "You're not going to believe this. I just found this razor blade." And so I said, "Well, go ahead and set it on the table. And because when I come in, I want to take a look at it." And so she set it on the table. And when I got back, I walked upstairs and I yelled down. I said, "Where's the razor blade?" And she yelled up. She's like, "It's sitting right there on the edge of the table." And I said, "Miranda, it's not here." So she walked up and she's like, "I set it right here on this table." And to this day, I have not seen the razor blade. It has completely vanished.
Wow.
So we also
got their contraband back.
Exactly. And then we also, on our little table up there, because that's where we had all our cleaning supplies, we had a pair of red-handled scissors. And about 2 days after the razor blade went missing, the red-handled scissors are gone. And so we've looked everywhere for these scissors. And we tell that story to paranormal investigators when they come and they take a tour of the jail. And so we actually had a team that asked the question, what are the owners of the jail looking for? And they got the EVP of scissors. And so, it's very interesting. The spirits here really are intelligent, and they're trying to tell us even stories about the jail. They're trying to get across to us. For example, in 1933, there was an inmate here by the name of Jerome Boyett, and he was in here for murdering the sheriff in the neighboring county. And so he was in here for about 8 days. And after that, a mob busted through the front door. They beat the jailer who was here, ran up and grabbed Jerome, took him out, and they killed him. And so we tell that story. And so we had an author who wrote a book about that story. And so we had gotten an advanced copy of this book on a Friday. And so there was a paranormal team that came in that Friday night to do an investigation. And when they were in the room directly across from the front door, they kept getting the EVP of anvil. They got it 3 times, anvil, 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 and which is an interesting word, but nothing that we thought was really germane to what was going on here. So they just mentioned to Miranda when they were leaving, they said, we got this word anvil 3 times in this room. And the interesting thing is when we went back and looked at that book that we had received that morning, the book is written about that real event, but it's written as a fictional character telling that real story. And the character in the book is named Anvil.
Oh, wow.
And so Miranda asked the author, she said, "Why did you use the name Anvil for this character in this book?" And he was gobsmacked. He said, "The reason I used the name Anvil is because when the mob came through and beat the jailer in the front doorway, as they were running by, somebody looked at him and said, 'That boy looks like he'd been beaten by an anvil.' And his nickname, the jailer's nickname for the rest of his life, was Anvil." And so we didn't know that. The paranormal investigation, the paranormal investigation team certainly could not have known that. So the fact that the jail was saying the word anvil to these investigators is pretty phenomenal. And that's what really happens here. We get these very interesting words that are really germane to the situation that's going on here.
Wow. That is really, really wild. And I mean, like, I myself have, hey, Int, wherever you are, His name is Ent, short for entity. But he's this thing that follows me, and doesn't matter where I am across the country. Like, I will literally, my wife's been right there where I am looking for something, and I turn around and it just pops up on my desk, right where I said I put it. Yeah.
That happens here too.
And to know that things like that are being tied to specific moments in history to the place, that is really impressive.
Yeah, exactly. I mentioned that there was a sheriff here in 1925. He was killed right at our front door. He was bringing in a moonshiner that he had just arrested, and somebody came up behind him and shot him in the back of the head and killed him. And so his body was brought in here, and he was prepared for burial inside the jail. And aside from also being the sheriff, he was also the Baptist preacher in the town. And so we routinely hear humming. We use Amazing Grace, the song Amazing Grace, as a trigger item here. It seems to get a lot of responses. And there was one night where Miranda, the team had just left, and Miranda was locking up for the night. She was the only person in here, and she was getting ready to grab her things to walk out the door, and she heard a man humming behind her. And so when she walked back in to grab her stuff, she grabbed it and she left. But we also have a security camera that was sitting there. And so the next morning I came in and I looked at that footage, and we didn't capture the hum. But as soon as she realizes that she has heard something, she goes and grabs her bag. And at that moment, there's two male voices on the security camera. The first one said, "There she is." The second one said, "Not so loud next time." And again, very intelligent. Yeah, very intelligent things that are happening here.
Now, how do you take that? I guess, I mean, what intonation do you get from that? More of a be quiet or they'll realize, or a shut up or they'll know we're coming?
For us, for me, when we heard that, it was like, well, she heard you, so you may want to just tone the humming down, not so loud next time. But everything that has happened here in this jail, it has never been malicious. It has never been evil. It is really, in our minds, the inmates here or the spirits here really just want their story told, or they want to just interact with us. There's times where I'll just be sitting right where I am, and we'll hear footsteps run right above us, and we'll yell up. It's just like, "Hey, calm down up there." We'll hear doors shutting. Again, there's been times where pictures have come off the wall, which is interesting. That'll wake you up real fast. And but for us, it's never been anything scary or anything like that. It's just one of those things that we just feel that they're here to talk.
Yeah. And what are some of the other things that they have said? What are some of the other EVPs that you've gotten? Because you had investigated the location before y'all became involved with it. Correct? Miranda had. Yeah.
So Miranda is actually from Scott County. She was born and raised here. Her family has actually been here for about 4 or 5 generations. Oh, wow. So she and her family are completely entrenched within this community. Her mom and dad were teachers at the high school for 30 years. So pretty much everybody knows Miranda. I'm kind of the outsider coming into this relationship. But so Miranda had investigated this in 2014, and in our drunk tank, she actually captured a woman crying, and she captured some audible EVPs that night. When investigators come in, even when we're investigating, because, there'll be some nights where we'll just kind of say, "Hey, you want to stay here for a little bit and do an investigation?" So we'll routinely just go upstairs and sit with a voice recorder or the REM pod or whatever. Sure. So there was one night where we were upstairs, and we have a bunch of articles, newspaper articles, historical articles on the walls. And so we were reading one of the articles, and there's an article up there about a woman who was violently raped and murdered in the community, and her name was Rhonda Bird. And I just happened to say, "Does anybody in here know Rhonda Bird?" And a man's voice from out in the foyer said, "I knew her." And we captured that on audio. We both heard it audibly. That was pretty wild. I was actually here leading one of our flashlight tours one night, and it was myself, two I'd say kind of older teenager guys, two teenage boys, and then a mom and her daughter. And so there was just 5 of us. So we did the flashlight tour, and we were coming down here, and they were getting their coats on and everything. And as they're getting ready to leave, we're just talking about the hauntings and different places that are haunted here in Tennessee and all that. And from directly above us, there was a loud crash to the point where it almost sounded like one of the bunks upstairs had been pushed over. And one of the kids was like, "What the F was that?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's go." So all 5 of us ran upstairs, and we're standing there and everything's quiet. And I said, "Who's in here with us?" And from down here on the first floor, a man yelled up, said, "I'm in here too." And the boys, their face just turned white. And they're like, "I think we're going to go now." And I'm like, "No, you guys are going to come help me turn off all the lights. Everybody's coming up together."
We're all rolling through here.
Exactly. We will all leave as a group. But until then, you guys come upstairs with me. We're going to shut off the lights and lock the doors, and then you can go. But it's stuff like that happens, We were here on a flashlight tour. We had a group come in, and on that night, we'd actually split them up, and we had told them before we started, that if you're going to take any pictures, take 3 in a row. So click, 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 just so you can have a baseline and see if anything happens. And so in our drunk tank, Miranda was down there with 2 of the guests, and one of the guests took 3 shots, boom, boom, boom. And, we continued on with the investigation and such, and they left. And so the next morning, she messaged and said, "I think I caught a ghost." And so we looked at it, and we see her series of 3 pictures, and you see 1, there's nothing there. 2, there's nothing there. On the 3rd one, it definitely looks like a shadow figure standing there. We can't explain it. It's actually on our Facebook page if you want to go take a look at it, at the historic Scott County Jail Facebook page. We have it on there. It's pretty phenomenal evidence. And so those are the type of things that really happen around here, and they happen on a daily basis.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. And I've been on quite a few paranormal investigations, things like that in my time. There have definitely been moments where, like you said, no, we're all going to pony up here. We're all going to roll together right now.
Exactly.
Now you've been on far more investigations than I have, of course, but how often is it that I guess how often is it that you hear something audible on an investigation, not in post, like EVP? Because I just part of our baseline was the fact that we never reviewed footage or clips like at the moment or that night. We always had a couple days, came together and reviewed things. That was just our protocol for stuff. But how often do you hear something while you're on an investigation, and what is the percentage difference between how often you hear things where you're sitting right now?
Well, when Soul Sisters goes out on investigations, I'd say probably 15% of the time on those investigations, we'll hear something audibly, and then we'll go back and review it and found, we've captured it on our audio recorders and such. So it's a very low percentage to that standpoint. Now here, it's unlike any place I've ever been, to tell you the truth. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a co-owner here. This place talks. There was one time I was opening up on a Sunday morning, and I was up on the 3rd floor, which is our maximum security floor. And I was opening the windows because it was a beautiful morning, and I had a cup of coffee with me. And I said, "Good morning. Who wants a cup of coffee?" And a man's voice said, "Open your eyes." And it was just like that. It was like, "Open your eyes." And I thought somebody had come in, and I sprinted over to the stairs. I'm like, "Hello." And of course, nobody was here because I had shut the door behind me because we weren't open yet. So it's routine that we will hear something audible, whether it be a whistle or a hum or an EVP. Most of the teams that have come have captured at least one audible EVP.
Wow.
There are some teams.
Wow.
Yeah, there are some teams that that capture a lot of evidence. There was a team here called RKB Paranormal, and that team is made up of 2 guys. They're both corrections officers. So they were up on our 2nd floor, and they were using terms that corrections officers would use, right, in a jail. So they were they were in our kitchen area. And so the way the second floor is, when you come up on the second floor, there's a little tiny hallway, and then it opens up into like a foyer. And you've got 3 big cells and then one big kitchen. And so they were in the kitchen area, and they had a REM pod and an EDI box on the table there that's in the kitchen, and they had the kitchen door closed. And so the sequence of events that happened, and they got this all on film, the sequence of events was there was a woman out in the foyer that said, "Help me." They got that. So it says, "Help me." As soon as she said, "Help me," the EDI box and the REM pod start going off. When that starts going off, they grab their camera and they open the door to the kitchen and they pan out into the foyer. As they pan out, they're standing there for about 4 or 5 seconds, just letting the camera run. A shadow figure runs across, an orb comes down from the ceiling, and a picture gets flung off the wall, and it goes about 4.5 feet.
Wow.
It's incredible. So then when we slowed that video down, we slowed it to about 10%. As you see the picture start to come off the wall, you see a shadow arm push it. It's amazing. You don't see it in full speed, but when you put it down to slow speed, you actually see an arm come out and push this picture along. Because, and in full disclosure, we've had some pictures that just fall because of gravity here, because there's some walls that we can't drill into, so they're hung up with Velcro. But every time they fall, it is a straight down fall. No picture has ever moved other than a straight line down. This picture, when you see it in the video, it looks like something grabs it from the top left corner and flips it. It flips in the air, and it literally lands 4.5 feet. And we measured it. We measured it from where it comes off the wall to where it lands, and it's 4.5 feet. And so that type of violent sling or swing of this picture is unexplainable. We tried for about a half an hour to debunk this picture being flung off the wall, and it's just, there's no way that it can happen naturally.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, if you were in like a slanty shanty building or something, and a convoy of 18-wheelers went by, sure, something like that could happen. You are in a sandstone building. Like, that building ain't shaking. It ain't moving unless there's like an event.
Exactly. I mean, we even actually
would have been shaking and moving.
Exactly. I mean, we're going to such lengths as we were, opening and closing all the doors to make sure there wasn't some type of a suction or
air draft or something like that.
Anything like that, because we wanted to make sure that we tried everything to try to come up with a reasonable explanation as to how this picture gets flung off the wall. Now, if it was just the picture, that in and of itself would have been pretty cool evidence.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the entire sequence of events, from the EVP to the REM pod and the EDI box to the shadow figure to the orb to all of that, it's probably one of the best pieces of evidence that I've seen in a long time. And so that's just what happens here at this jail.
Well, and interestingly, I was going to bring up a couple things specifically in regards to this. Number one, the fact that the 2 gentlemen that make up the team are themselves correctional officers. Might have been something that sparked such the visceral reaction after the help me. Yeah. Because of course, help me. Who would have come running if you're talking about a time loop happening for the last 100 years, Correctional officers would have come running. Yeah. So just the fact that they are walking around using the same lingo, and that doesn't necessarily mean the other part I was going to bring up, was, do you have, or at least to your knowledge yet, because you're still fairly new to the property and to investigating the property, but to your knowledge yet, do you have record of ghosts or entities there that are associated with people that did not pass there? So, for instance, guards, because guards, I mean, it's pretty frequent in a lot of prisons, jails, things like that some of the people that are still inhabiting that space are people that just inhabited that space on the daily. Like they spent 40 years as a correctional officer. That's kind of like a teacher. That's how they identified themselves.
And that's a great question. And we do have evidence of that. For example, there was a sheriff here. He was very beloved by the county. This happened in 1986. He was elected in 1976. In 1986, again, very well liked sheriff. He got himself into some trouble because he started running drugs. And so he was part of an FBI sting in 1986 called Mach 10, where there's several county officials in this county and neighboring counties, judges, sheriffs, police officers that were arrested by the FBI for their involvement in this drug running scheme. And so he was sentenced to federal prison and he did die there. We have evidence from at least one of the teams who have been here that had a very interesting REM pod session upstairs with who they believe was Marion Carson, that sheriff. Obviously, he did not die here, but he had a connection to this facility. And so that is an example of one person who did not die here, but we do believe that his spirit does come back here.
Yeah, because once again, you've just invested so much energy in that place. You're tied to it. You know, and that's really interesting. Once again, just the fact that the guys that had such a visceral response were themselves correctional officers. I wonder if that is a case for them when they visit other prison-like areas, things like that, you know?
I do believe that now they're a newer team. They're great guys. But another interesting connection that they have with us specifically is when we first opened the jail, we were asking for anybody who wanted to donate items of a law enforcement nature that they wanted to contribute to our law enforcement appreciation room.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, this team actually donated a hat that was worn by their fellow corrections officer who was killed in the line of duty. So that officer's hat is hanging in our law enforcement appreciation room. And so that is the connection. That's an interesting connection that they kind of have to our building. And I don't know if that was really the catalyst behind what they captured, but to your point, they were using those terms. They were using corrections officers' terms and stuff, and for them to be able to capture that entire sequence again was very, very telling and really indicative of what we're experiencing here. That
is once again just a visceral response from an environment. On occasion you'll see one of those things, but to see them all in conjunction that's pretty big. That's pretty big. That is really incredible, and kudos to y'all to making this happen, to putting this together, to actively not only preserving a part of history locally, but preserving it with this light on it. Once again, the fact that y'all have made something successful out of this is absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you. And that's really what we're trying to do. As I said before, the company that we created was History Highways and Haunts, LLC. Yeah. And so we love this jail and we're obviously very committed to this jail. But what we also want to do, our long-term plan, is to help other locations put together the similar plan, right? We want to go out and essentially be consultants to allow other properties to kind of flourish the way we have. Yeah. So if there's anybody listening who has a location that they're interested in preserving, we would absolutely love to talk to you and can help consult with you about what we did, the business plan that we put together, how we approached the town, and kind of what we've done so far to make this successful.
Well, and I think it's because, you've got somebody, like you said, that is fantastic with marketing.
She is, yep.
The stuff on y'all's website, the interaction on your website, everything is top-notch, beautiful, amazing.
Thank you.
The work, the graphics packages are fantastic. And,
well, thank you.
The content of the show is fantastic. Let's because we've got you for about another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's spend the last few minutes talking about Jailhouse Informant, your show, your podcast that you're all of a few episodes into, coming from the Scott County Jail.
Yes. So we decided to start a podcast called the Jailhouse Informant podcast. And it's really a mix of true crime, paranormal, current events, all those things that are kind of happening. Because, again, what we really want to do is allow the history to be the driver of this podcast. Yeah. So we talk about Scott County in the sense as we'll have Scott County guests on. For example, we have the assistant district attorney. She'll be our guest tomorrow. Oh, and wow. So we had the mayor of Huntsville. You know, he was our very first guest. And so we really want to kind of bring the community together and say, hey, these are your people. These are your representatives in the community. And this is, you know, kind of a very candid conversation with them about things that are happening in the community and their ties to the jail. Right. And so but then we also bring in elements of true crime, or we'll talk to other location owners. For example, a couple of weeks ago, we had David Kreider, who owns the jail out in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So he was talking about his experience of being an owner of a location. And so we really kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit. Yeah. And really talk about those type of things and make it very interactive. You know, you can log on and ask questions or just kind of see who we're talking to and add comments if you want to. And then the last segment that we do every week, which is kind of fun, is we were donated about 1,000 newspapers from 1950. Wow. Yeah. From 1950 to 2005. We have pretty much one newspaper every week from 1950. So what we've done is we'll go in every week. We randomly grab one of those newspapers and we read the headlines. Love it. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So people have been tuning in, and we had our very first content. Yeah, our very first episode that we did that on, the next day we had some woman tag somebody else and say, hey, look, they mentioned your baby picture. And it was her, you know, one baby announcement. Yeah. Her 1-year baby announcement from 1984. And so it really is something that we kind of really want to highlight the community and such. And we're having a lot of fun with it. And so this month, because it's International Women's History Month, we'll have women guests on the podcast. Like I said, tomorrow we have the assistant district attorney for the area. And so it's just a lot of fun. And it's one of those things where we want to highlight the jail, obviously. We want to highlight the community. We want to highlight true crime and things we're seeing in the paranormal world as well. So it's kind of a really fun mix of everything for everybody.
Well, and once again, especially having deep ties with the community, like the DA, things like that. Mm-hmm. Did y'all happen to get any actual like jailhouse records or anything like that as part of the jailhouse ownership? Like case records or?
Well, the Historical Society is directly across the street. So they house all of the prison records and the inmate records for the county. And so we routinely go over there. And so we've got articles all over the wall of different inmate records. For example, we had an inmate here who was he actually committed murder. He murdered his wife. And so he was supposed to go to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. But the sheriff at the time, he worked out a deal where the inmate got to stay here because he was a master mechanic. So he worked on the deputies' cars and thereby saved the county a lot of money because they didn't have to take it to a mechanic. So those types of interesting stories we're highlighting. So we have his inmate records, you know, we have, all of his court documents and all of that. We have them framed and put up on the wall. So those are types of things that we have just for the historical component.
Well, yeah. And not only that, but how did a story like that resonate in the small community? How did it actively affect the community? Would be, I mean, that's really, really cool content to be able to put episodes together like that, because it's a different type of true crime. It's different when because like I said earlier, my family's from a very tiny town, and I mean like tiny, to the point where you pick up a Sunday paper, you will see the blotter. Yeah. Like you see the blotter, like so-and-so was arrested for drunk and disorderly. So-and-so popped off and hit his wife and got arrested. Like you may as well print their address.
Well, you know, and that's what's interesting
about it. Make it easy for the lynch mob, you know?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I can say this because I am not from here. You know, I'm from Florida. I'm a Floridian. I'm moved up here just for this.
I'm from Houston. And when I went there, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it is. Kris, I have never, outside of like the Middle East, I have never heard of a car bombing, right? I've got 4 stories on my wall in here of car bombings in Scott County.
Wow.
And so it's just like, right? And it's like, I'll just say this, Scott Countyans did crime right. And so we have a lot of different stories to talk about, a lot of things, that we're sharing. And it's interesting because, we've got these parents that are bringing their kids in, and they're showing them our all of our displays, and they're saying, this happened. I remember when this happened, and it's really bringing back that connection again, that communal connection.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I remember this. I was here when this happened, or I remember this guy. He taught high school or whatever.
Yeah.
And we also have an audio tour that people can take. It's
cool.
So we've you can actually listen to it. You don't even have to come to the jail. You can listen to it right here on our website.
Nice.
But if you come to the jail, each of the rooms have an audio tour stop. Some of them are actually read or are told by different people who are here or had a connection to the jail. And so it's just, for us, it is one of those things that we didn't want you just to buy a ticket to come in and see a jail. We wanted you to buy a ticket to come in and have an experience. And I think most people, when they leave here, are really blown away by the fact that they have an experience.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm extremely proud about what we've built and what we've done, and I'm just excited about where it's going.
I am proud for you guys, and to have seen things happen as they happened live on social media, to see the changes going on, and even for you, and to see how happy you are with everything. It's fantastic, Kris. It really, really is.
Well, thank you.
So before we let you go, one last time for shameless self-promotion. Let everybody know where they can go to tune into the Jailhouse Informant, where they can go to book their tour, where they can go if they have their own paranormal group, where they can go to rent the jailhouse for an evening for an excursion of their own.
Sure, absolutely. So we're very active on Facebook under the Historic Scott County Jail Facebook page. Our website is www.historicscottcojail.com. And all of the information about all of our tours, the booking calendar, methods to book, all of that. Our online gift shop is on that website. So www.historicscottcojail.com. And then, of course, if you want to see anything Soul Sisters Paranormal, you can go to www.soulsistersparanormal.com. And also my business partner, she's Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations. So you can go to www.ghostbikerexplorations.com and see all of her episodes as well.
Fantastic, man. Thank you once again for taking the time, because I know your schedule has been thronged lately, which is great.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
I love nothing more than seeing people doing what they love, being self-employed. It is such a blessing in life. And you have next to no day off, but you love every minute of what you do. So, you're not really working.
You're absolutely right. And, to be able to do it with my best friend is just, it's just icing on the cake on that point. But, Kris, thank you so much for your support. You've been there since day one. And I just can't thank you enough for all of the support you've given us and all the love you've shown us. So thank you. Anytime, I would love to come back and be a guest.
Oh, anytime, Kris, you are always welcome. We need to have you on more regularly. My group is your group. You have things to promote, whatever. Feel free to drop it right on in there.
Perfect.
That is what we are here for. Please do hold the line while we close things out for this segment, and head on over to commercial break. When we come back from our break, folks, we will be joined by the Southeast Texas Bigfoot. Well, it's just Southeast Texas Bigfoot. But they are the folks putting on the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Roadshow coming up in Mineola, Texas, of which we are a sponsor. We will be talking about all of their research out in the field, this fantastic event, what inspired them to put it on, what kind of speakers are going to be there, like Lyle Blackburn. Can't wait to meet him in person, stuff like that. So hold on through this commercial break, and we will be right back with you, folks. With the rise in attention to the health benefits of cannabis and cannabinoids, including CBD, True Hemp Science has become one of the premier providers of full-spectrum CBD and CBD-related products. Using a proprietary spagyric process, True Hemp Science extracts maximum benefit from the whole hemp plant. Buds, leaves, stems, seeds, even roots. Every part of the plant is used and then reused to formulate a rich, complex profile of CBD, CBD derivatives, and terpenes guaranteed to provide the relief and benefits you need daily. Visit TrueHempScience.com to experience the best CBD oils, edibles, and topicals on the market today. And use code CURIOUS7 to save 7% off your entire purchase of $50 or more and get 2 25 milligram CBD cookies or brownies free. That website again is TrueHempScience.com and the code is CURIOUS7. Have you considered starting a podcast? Looking for a way to make your business a voice of authority in an industry? Then Podcast Cadet is the solution for you. Whether starting a podcast for yourself, your brand, business, school, church, or just plain fun, Podcast Cadet is here to help you navigate the waters of the podcast industry. Specializing in one-on-one consultation and training with industry professionals in fields ranging from podcast technology and editing to distribution, monetization, and even social media strategies. Podcast Cadet tailors their services to the specific needs of you and your podcast. Do you already have a podcast and trying to find ways to engage and grow your audience? Sign up for your Podcast Cadet audit today and let us help you explore new and exciting ways to leverage your content and elevate your podcast brand to whole new levels. From consultational workshops to affordable podcast production and maintenance packages, Podcast Cadet is your one-stop shop for everything podcast related on the internet. Visit podcastcadet.com today to sign up for your consultation or training and use code CURIOUS20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. That website again is podcastcadet.com. The Curious Realm Podcast is your source for the latest and greatest news and events in the world of the paranormal, esoteric, and forbidden knowledge. And there's no better way to spark the conversation than with items from the Curious Realm store. Choose from fan favorites like hoodies, mouse pads, coffee mugs, and more. Buy books and items from your favorite Curious Realm guests. Get your hands on the latest gear for paranormal investigations and experiments we discuss on the show. Open your web browser and stop on by the Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to buy the latest Curious Realm wear and out-of-this-world gifts for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm. Our guest this segment is going to be Mike Turber from 5x5 News. And I know in the promos I said that we would be talking about Tiger King updates and maybe some Ukraine stuff. However, huge news update, folks. It is official. Putin has used hypersonic weapons in the Ukraine kerfuffle that is going on over there. We will be talking to Mike Turber about what that means. Once again, this is the quote, unstoppable nuclear capable hypersonic missile. So like if they basically what they're saying is if they wanted it to be, it could totally be a nuclear tipped hypersonic missile, folks. It wouldn't have to just be a, hey, we took down the building down the road, or your intelligence infrastructure. And this is huge because it is something that Mike and I have been saying would be the herald of disclosure, and what the real part of disclosure and UAPs and Nimitz and all that footage, the disclosure of the infrared laser system on F-18s that can make things that look like the UAPs. What all of this has been leading up to is hypersonic technology, making that the talk of the day, turning that into the literal fear of the day, which it should be. And I know that there's a member of the group out there that's always like, pew, pew, lasers, we got them. We'll be addressing that, I guarantee you, folks. But welcome back to the show, good friend Mike Turber. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing excellent. I'm doing really good. Glad to be back on your show again. I always enjoy you being on there. It's just like us just sitting down chatting and having a good time, and that's the kind of podcast I like to be on. So
you know, man, I always appreciate having you on. You and Dr. John Hall and people like Robert Duncan, and the casual conversations that we've had about these incredible topics are really what has driven a lot of the growth of the show and directed us into what has become Curious Realm from Dudes and Beer. So big tip of the hat to you, my friend. You were a big part of that pivot. And I can never, ever thank you enough for everything that you've done, the support that you've given us, everything that you have come on and talked about. It has been pretty incredible because I'm not going to say 100%, but I'll give you 78. I'll give you 78 to 82. I'll give you 78 to 82% accuracy of everything that we've talked about with you has come to be.
I'll take it. Oh, man, anything over 50 is good, right?
Because that basically says that my accuracy is 78 to 82. So, I'll give us both a little humility kick there to start off with. But once again, man, like this death from above, wow, it just blows my mind that they actually used the dagger in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. It's something that I think that once again, like we were talking about pre-show, like we've talked about with guests, like we started talking about with our guest in the Ukraine, where, hey, Putin's got to do something. He literally has no victory.
It's Putin versus the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and literally it's the fact of he's crashed the ruble. He's got to do something. He's got to do something that's going to be a game changer and a shaker. And if you're talking about all the oligarchs that paid for the polonium handshake that put him into office and the one that will get him out of office,
exactly.
He's got to do something to please them. He's got to do something to sell the tickets, to put the butts in the seats, so to speak. And to really put the mustard on the hot dog, you know what I mean? And,
he painted himself into a corner, and and in his mind, he's coming out fighting. In the 80s, when we looked at Russia, we looked at them from looking at the leader, and who's advising the leader, and then you look more at the advisors to know what the leader's going to do. You just had to know what the advisors were advising him to do.
Sure.
It's a similar situation in most countries, but with the way Russia is now, is that's not really the case. Putin is his own thing. He's been there long enough. He doesn't view himself as a president. He views himself as a czar. And his actions are proving that. He's a true dictator, a thug, as Biden. One of the few things I agree with Biden is called him a thug. Okay, that's pretty appropriate. So you look at it and then you try to say, okay, what's he going to do next? How do you look at a psychopathic dictator / whatever his situation is and predict what he's going to do next, because you can't look at the advisors anymore. A lot of his advisors are either leaving him or they're doing their own thing just to stay alive. The oligarchs are leaving and going to Israel. I mean, just everything's going to shambles around him.
Yeah, and I mean, even to say that, I'm bringing up the article right now. The Russian cosmonauts even appeared in Ukrainian colors.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
There was the whole worry of, we got a dude stuck up on the space station, and we use Soyuz to get people up and down from there. We use Soyuz to get supplies up and down. And this dude's family's been like all over the media, like, oh my God, our son is literally stuck in outer space. Now, the Russians themselves, old school Russia especially, folks, I'm going to hop it back to and rewind it to what you were talking about for just a split second there, which was, old school Gorbachev Russia, pre-Gorbachev Russia.
Right.
The USSR that we grew up with in the 80s, like Wolverines, like we are living every single 80 movie that I grew up with. Right now, presently.
That's it. It doesn't matter. It's like we recycle in every 20, 30, 40 years or whatever. We go backwards for some reason, and someone has to beat their chest, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, to see those cosmonauts show up in Ukrainian colors is beautiful, man. It's amazing, and that's one of those that like. You could not get a more entrenched program within the propaganda of old school Russia.
Exactly.
Than the cosmonaut program.
And no one in Russia is looked up more to than the cosmonauts and some of their head pilots and stuff like this. I mean, that's their world is that. And what would be interesting is
left a guy up there like he's still floating, folks.
Yeah, well, they might send up a SpaceX Dragon and let the Russians come over here since they're flying Ukrainian colors. Hey, we'll bring you back down over here. We'll land you just off the coast of Panama City.
What would we have to call that? We'd have to call it something more appropriate, like
spring break here in Florida.
Project Velcro. Project Velcro, is that better, because of like NASA and the space program instead of Project Paperclip, like Project Velcro to bring all the cosmonauts over to our side?
Project Nets Pravda. We'll call it that. And so no news. We'll call it no news. That would be awesome. Bring them over here. Show them a good time.
But it's it is one of those, and the whole reason that why I wanted to rewind it and bring up the cosmonaut thing is that what most people, even most analysts, are looking at with Russia is Russia, the USSR, the Soviet Union, what we were in the old school Cold War against, where, they were unified under a Stalinistic leader.
Yep.
It was, hey, you had 200,000 troops in your army ready to roll that were loyal, you know.
Back then, and now they have to lie to them to get them to go anywhere.
Since the fall of communism, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, that is not the case. Since the democratization of Russia, it's not the case. And even to see the thousands and thousands and thousands of people out in the streets protesting shows the fact that this is no longer the USSR that he's holding on to, and like you said, is considering himself a czar.
Yeah, it's not like back in the day, when Reagan said those famous words, "Mr. Gorbachev, please tear down this wall," and then the wall came down, and all those people that were there, we're not looking at that scenario now. They've gone through all the changes. They know that they can't hold this information for long. Remember, the internet wasn't around back then.
That's it.
We didn't have that. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all these different ways for people to talk to each other and to see things live. I mean, if you go on TikTok, even you'll see live from Ukraine. On TikTok, and it's like every time you take a look, it's something different, but it's the same thing. And the Russians' tactics in this war are very revealing. Very much so. It's a little different than I would have expected, but
it has been squirrel against the fox tactics, literally, where it's like, but it's like a squirrel is running their military right now with the Russians. They cannot make up their mind what to do. Their tanks are literally getting slaughtered.
Right.
Just destroyed by the columns. They've lost 4 generals. Like I said, he's crashed the ruble, so you better do something.
Well, when you come into a country pounding on this pavement, the United States strategy is always different.
Yeah.
Definitely different from this, where we'll air campaign until, basically they're beaten to submission from the air because no one can match us in the air.
It's just shock and awe you from the air.
Yeah. Exactly. Shock and awe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just bomb you into submission and bam, like one shock and you're like, okay, dude, that's we was just playing.
I'll never forget watching CNN when that war started and you got Bernie Shaw sitting there going, and we think we just saw a missile come down and take a left. It went straight towards some target somewhere, and they're describing this live, and that's something that we can pretty much do. And now, looking at what Russia's doing in Ukraine, they can't hide the fact that they're hitting civilian population. They can't hide the fact that this hit a maternity ward and a children's hospital and stuff like this. I mean, what kind of a sick individual you have to be? And of course, they say, well, people were held up there and they, there's no sign of anything there. You go back to the satellite images of the days before, the same cars that were parked there days before were parked there the same day. And it's the hospital personnel. So,
precisely.
Nothing. He's going to have war crime issues. He's going to, the hypersonic missile.
It's going to happen.
The hypersonic missile is a question.
And I just brought up the BBC article right now. Russia's state TV hit by stream of resignations. Once again, not the USSR that we once knew. And I think that most analysts, most everybody else, has always considered this fact because, hey, any UN efforts, things like that, Russia has contributed. Russia contributed to the fight against the Taliban. They, they were in there with us, everything else. So one for all for one, these dudes are trained. But you get them outside of a UN convoy. You get them outside of cooperation with other military leaders and other strategists. And it seems like they are not the tacticians that they make themselves out to be.
Right. Yeah, they're not. And again, going back to something I said earlier a little bit was, if you have to lie to your own military, especially when you're talking about the troops, to get them to do something that they're going to go in and the people will be welcoming them there, and the people, they're trying to get Nazis out of Ukraine. Who the hell would sit around and go, I got a good one. Let's say that we're trying to get Nazis out of Ukraine. What? When did this make a huge comeback? And I understand the terminology is there's a play on that, but at the same time, you're thinking, if they tell one group of people one thing, another they say this is a training exercise, blah blah blah, and these people they're not exactly looking at their social media and trying to figure out what's going on in the world. The Russian troops sometimes are like sequestered almost. So they go in here and then they start figuring out what's really going on, and you see a bunch of them going, okay, here's the tank, you can have it. I'm walking away. And that's happened. It has happened.
And I've got it up from cbc.ca right now. Putin calls pro-Western Russians traitors. Mm-hmm. Russian President Vladimir Putin went on TV to excoriate Russians who do not back him, calling them, quote, the scum of the scum and the traitors, and referencing a, quote, necessary self-cleansing of society. Like, homie is literally talking about ethnic cleansing. He's talking about, like, rounding people up and getting rid of them because they don't agree.
And he's talking about his own people. Now, when you think about it, not only the Russian people, but the Ukrainian people are effectively Russian.
Well, and it's interesting, and that's one reason why the first person that I wanted on, and whenever I invited him to be on, I called them up, Richard B. Spence, who taught the course, History of Secret Societies. He's doing a new one on the history of occult in America, all that kind of stuff. He spent years in Amero-Russo intelligence relations teaching that on the high-end level at University of Idaho. And it was interesting to talk to him about literally the founding of the Ukraine and what was the beginning of all this and what happened that caused this. How did, you can't say it ain't been brewing. And yeah, there were a lot of red flags, a lot of flares in the air since 2017 that something like this may light off. And oddly enough, I mean, my audience knows. Sorry to any listeners out there. Hey, I am not a Trump guy. I support any president we have. Next to the Pope, they have the hardest job in the world. But I was not a huge fan of it. It was kind of like if somebody elected my dad president. Be like,
I'm not either. So we're in the same boat there. I'm not a politics fan.
The one thing that I held the whole time was the fact of, you know what? We're going to see a long period of no war because ain't nobody going to want to pop something off with that dude there.
Right. Well, if you think about it,
the fact of like he's got fingers on the button because there's 38 levels of protection against that. It's more the fact of like, no, all he would have to do is move Congress to do something. It's like, no, nobody's going to do that while he's there. Something wild will happen. He's too much of a wild card, whereas Biden is a known quantitative, fully a known quantitative when it comes to everything about war for the last 30 years.
Well, when you think of it, you think, well, going on the Trump thing, just to extend it just for a second. If you look at under Bush, Russia invaded, I think it was Georgia or Crimea. I think it was Georgia, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Then under Obama, they go into Crimea. And then now here we are, with Biden, they go into, obviously, Ukraine.
And that's during what Trump, it was.
Yeah, Putin went nowhere. he was under wraps the whole time. So, when Trump comes out and he says, hey, I'm the only president in this century that whatever, that holds true because of the fear of the unknown. Yeah. The other leaders you don't know what Trump's going to do. And with the other ones are somewhat predictable. With Biden, I have a personal opinion against Biden because of my situation with Afghanistan right now.
Yeah.
So I am biased in that way, but I'm registered independent, so I'm not Democrat or Republican, but I tend to lean towards Republican. But overall, the situation we're at right now is you've got a leader of what effectively is the communist world, okay?
Yep.
And he's going into a country, and the entire world is against him except for 4 countries.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, a decision will have to be made by him as to which level do you want to take this to.
Yeah. Well, that is what I've held the whole time. That is what I had discussion with family members and friends about just over this last few days until we talked today. Was if you wanted to do anything, yes, of course. We're not going to send troops over there. We're not going to help. We're not going to help bring planes in. We're not going to do anything that NATO's not doing. But if you wanted to be a leader and you wanted to do something, the one thing that the president has the power to do is stop trade in its tracks now.
Yep.
It might go to the House. It might go to the Congress after that. But he can go, oil, we ain't buying it from Russia. Now, he could have done that day one of the invasion. The problem is, and this is just coming at it from like somebody who taught ages 4 to 40 in my life. You gave him too much latitude.
Yes.
Once you let the kid get to that point, you've lost it. You've lost it. You've lost the classroom. You've lost the discipline. And he's never not going to be able to get to that point. The kids will never be on your side until after it gets to that point. That's how it works in a classroom. It's no different in the world.
I mean, everyone is going to test Biden. And if you make it a point that when you go into office that you are this and you're that and you're set in these certain things, then people know not to test you in those areas. Or if one person tests you and they see that he actually did what he said he was going to do. But that's not the case, with Biden. Yeah. So in some ways, if you think about it, he is kind of unpredictable. But it's becoming more predictable that he's not going to make a quick decision that would have a hard decision.
Fast decision.
Exactly. And who knows who's running the White House anyway? I have questions on that. Well, I mean, there's a lot.
And that's the thing. Cutting off trade, that is not even a hard decision. Might be a fast one, but it's not hard when somebody invades a sovereign nation. Exactly. Ukraine started flying their own flag the day that the USSR broke up.
Yep.
And it became Russia and the Union of former Soviet states or whatever it was that was up in the air until all these places settled out and became their own stuff, like Estonia and everything else.
And Ukraine has done quite well when you think about it over time. And that may be a problem. Maybe Russia is looking at it like, hey, we need to acquire this back.
And that's just it, though, especially militarily. That is the tip of the hat that I give them, because typically militarily, the one thing that you have to depend on, and the one thing that beyond all else is that flag. There was a reason why back in the day there was a dude whose job it was to carry the flag in front of everybody. That was the motivating factor. You were doing this for Mother England. You were doing this for the United States, what have you.
Yep. And you wanted to see that flag go one direction.
And that's what Richard B. Spence brought up, was the fact that Ukraine just means borderlands. It was an ever-changing and ever-flexing area that moved and changed and flexed for generations since the time of the czars, depending on what was going on in Persia and what was going on over in India and what they were squeezed between three different empires.
Right. And a lot of those countries that are semi-landlocked are all have that similar issue. Obviously, a classic example is Afghanistan. Afghanistan doesn't really have, if you go there, there's really not a named border between them and Pakistan.
Well, and that's just it. It's the fact of, because of that, there was no actual Ukrainian national identity.
Right.
Ukraine just meant the borderlands. Like, this is the few hundred miles you're going to have to pass through before you get to that known country over there. It shifts, it changes depending on what's happening. And it wasn't until the fall of the Soviet Union that the Ukraine became a country. So the fact that they don't have that, we've been a country for 200 years, like bicentennial, George Washington, all that kind of stuff to lean on as motivation. The fact that they are literally putting it to the Russian army right now.
They are. And what's interesting is they're doing it with not a huge amount of outside support. They've actually done quite a bit with their own internal structure that's very, very impressive. Also, we have to throw some kudos out to the citizens for chiming in and doing their part too. They've taken down helicopters. You got this one family that there's a little following on where they it's like the Molotov family. Every time something comes in, they pounce on it with Molotov cocktails, and it's amazing that they're taking out tanks with a bottle of alcohol. And that's the term Molotov, we know where that comes from.
Old school, and that's just it. It's funny because that is what embroiled Russia. The last time Russia really got it handed to them, where it was like, okay, Russia's just going to chill now, was Afghanistan. The Taliban, where we funded the Taliban. We taught them to fight in the streets. We taught them to fight guerrilla style. We taught them to do things like use Molotov cocktails, stuff like that. improvised explosives, everything else. And yeah, like, hey, distilleries in the Ukraine started pumping that out. It was like, wow, that's awesome. And there were actually distilleries here where it was like, you buy one bottle from us, we will send them money for one bottle of production for a Molotov cocktail. So it was like your way to support the Ukrainian rebel effort to stop this incursion. And it's even now, I have it up from Breaking Defense, breakingdefense.com. Ukraine is getting Switchblade. It should be just the first wave of loitering munitions for Kyiv.
And that's a canister launch drone system too.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful system. It's easy to deploy, extremely difficult to defend against, and it's relatively inexpensive. So the tactics that can be. Here's the thing: is whenever
Pelican 1620, like come on, it's a little air launched. Like it looks like it's modeled after. I don't know if you know about the air hogs.
Yeah,
but they're like the little like rockets with the switchblade wings that are air launched. And whenever you look at this, like there's a little air pump and what looks like a mortar tube, and boop, the thing popping out.
Yeah, and then they also launch that same canister is multi-use. They actually launch other things too, which actually would take us back to TikTok. We'll keep going on this one.
And it's just the fact of this wave of technology that's coming out now. I want to loop back to the beginning of this in this last 30 minutes, and let's start getting into the hypersonic technology, because once again, that is what I have said the whole time about the UAP stuff, ATIP, all that is that the only explanation will be that we have to use this, and we got this technology somewhere else, but we have to use it against stuff like these hypersonic weapons, folks.
Well, when you look, the other thing too, when you just mentioned that it kind of brings us full circle back to technology as to with the ATIP and all this other stuff coming out. ATIP and everything we've talked about for the last few years on the UFO front and what have you, that was announced on December 16th. Of 2017. Guess when the missile that they fired last week actually is when it occurred, when it became operational, December of 2017.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the timing of some of this stuff is pretty suspect. But here's my take on the missile. From a military standpoint, I'll say this. It's not going to have much effect. From a military standpoint, it's going to have because the missile it's an incredible device. There's not much defense against it, because if it's going in a direction and it's going at Mach 10 or whatever speed this thing achieves, I think it's around Mach 10. Even if you hit this object, it's still going to continue on pretty much to the target. There's really not a whole lot you're going to be able to do about it, much less hit it in the first place. So from a psychological standpoint, when a country uses an entirely new type of weapon system, it puts everyone on edge, because you can talk about the T-72 tank, you can talk about various other things that have been around years and years and years and years, and everybody's kind of used to it. But as soon as something new comes out and it's kind of a mystery, there's all kinds of propaganda use that they will have. So, and keep in mind, this isn't intelligence that the United States released and said, hey, Russia launched a hypersonic missile. No, this was Russia coming out and saying, hey, look what we just did. And I guess they did that because we didn't announce it. Now, I'm kind of curious as to why that happened that way. Of course, last week, we knew they fired the hypersonic missile, but we didn't come out and say, hey, I'm wondering if that is an issue. I mean, if you think about it from a psychological standpoint, if we come out and say, hey, Russia just fired a hypersonic missile against Ukraine, what does that reveal? Yeah. Or what does it not reveal? Does it make people believe that, wow, we're just learning about this, but from Russia, why didn't the United States announce that missile was launched last week? And that's a pretty darn good question to be asking.
Well, you got to be willing to ask the question. You got to be willing to ask the question that, once again, like you said, game changer. It always makes people stop, wonder.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
I don't think it had quite the destructive impact of a nuclear attack. Once again, this is a nuclear capable weapon, which means that they could put a nuclear warhead on it.
Right.
So it was
plus
really
it's
more
a conventional weapon.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they think of a hypersonic missile, they're thinking of a kinetic type energy based weapon.
Yeah, and something like a DU Sabo or something like that that's been dropped from outer space.
Right,
you know.
right. Or the Thor, tungsten rods, and all these different things like that. So, when you look at this, if you look at the missile and you just look at the numbers and you go, okay, let's take a look at this thing. Let's see, it's a hypersonic missile. Okay, it's going to hit at Mach 10, which means just the kinetic energy alone will probably do a lot of damage. Probably in some cases more so than even if the conventional version of the weapon, the actual bomb itself would do. I mean, of course, as you put together, it helps. But the range is the missile is normally carried aloft by I think it's a MiG-31 is what's normally carrying it. It's a solid propellant rocket. It's not like our hypersonics. Our hypersonics are liquid. These are solid propellant.
Yeah.
The two key things to take from that: one is once you fire it, there's nothing you can do. You can't turn off a solid propellant rocket motor. So there's an issue. One, the type of warhead that this would have on it, and I don't mean on nuclear, it's only 500 kilograms, but it's going to be a fragmentation type warhead or type, I guess warhead isn't the proper term. So that's what you're looking at. But tip it with something nuclear. Yeah. And the thing about nuclear is you've got three places to blow up nuclear weapons. One is in space, one is in the air, and one is on the ground. So if you do it in space, you have an EMP pulse you're having to deal with.
Yeah.
This missile could do that very quickly over a lot of different areas, and you don't need a 500 kilogram warhead to do an EMP pulse that would affect hundreds and hundreds of miles of electronics.
That's right.
So you have that. But then when you have the air burst, which is normally your most destructive power, and you have this missile coming in at Mach 10, no one's going to be able to track and predict where it's going to go.
That's just it. That's just it. And it's the fact of, and once again, we've had a member of the group that for the longest time, whenever I post something about hypersonic missiles or hypersonic armaments, he's like, pew, pew, we got lasers. And it's like, the problem is tracking them.
Oh, yeah.
You're talking about 10 times the speed of sound. Yeah. So even AI, you're talking about a gimbal fast enough to follow that. With
keep in mind too, how much
a laser powerful enough to not only fire that fast and that focused and that powerful, but to track something, because it's kind of like burning into a piece of metal. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing about lasers. Lasers have to stay on target for a specific amount of time to get it to work. Even if it's taking down a small drone, it may take 2 or 3 seconds to melt through the outer shell to get to the electronics package and basically do that. You're normally going to fire it wherever the batteries are.
Yeah.
So that's how that system works. But those drones are moving at relatively slow speeds. The amount of distance traveled. Now, keep in mind, when the X-43, our hypersonic test platform, which was done on November 14th, 2004. November 14th, 2004. That was the day of the Nimitz thing, but November 16th is when they launched the X-43. So they're 2 days apart. But this missile, in its short time that it flew, was only a few seconds, of its actual powered flight. It went 850 miles. We don't have a laser that fires at things 850 miles away. So you would have to get this right at the point that the trajectory planes out, and it's going to stay a consistent course. It's not doing its up volley. It's not, making any maneuvers. And these things don't really make many maneuvers. You pretty much aim it and shoot it, and it's done. So to stay on that target, and these lasers have an effective range of their power. So you have to actually change the power of the laser while it's firing. Like you said earlier, track the object with a gimbal or what have you, and follow that along.
With enough intensity and wattage to either penetrate or heat up the casing enough to destroy the circuitry.
Yep.
To fry something.
And you know what's funny is there's another proposal. I'm not sure exactly. This isn't classified, I don't think.
I said, I want you to talk about nothing that you have been read into. And I know that you've been read into quite a bit about what is going on in the Ukraine and stuff like that. I want you to,
You're not going to believe this, but one of the teams I'm on, actually Lou Elizondo's on it.
Dope, dude. Heck yeah. What up, Louie?
I couldn't believe it. Somebody contacted me and said, "Hey, you're not going to believe this." I said, "What's that?" He says, "You know a guy named Lou?" I said,
"Guess who you're working with?"
I said, "Oh my God, yeah, of course." I know several people named Lou, but it's the only person that someone would contact me about is Elizondo. And next thing I know, he's like telling me, he says, "Yeah, I've been talking to him for the last few hours. You've been brought up a couple of times." And so, okay, well, don't throw me under the bus. But anyway, back to where I was going. A new type of laser where two lasers of different chemical, you have like a gallium arsenide laser. You'll have some other laser of some other chemical bases. So the chemical based lasers effectively are way more powerful than say your ruby diamond or your lasers that everybody's used to seeing, the Eve diode. So these lasers are super powerful. They have them in modified KC-135s, flying around doing what have you, and they've been around for a long time. People don't realize they've been around for a long time. What he's talking about, the Pew Pew, is he's thinking that our next generation fighter, maybe the SR-72, will be equipped
even the one that I'm showing on right now from National Interest, which is the article talking about could the U.S. military use lasers to kill Russia or China's hypersonic missiles, and they're talking about computerized gimbal, the computerized turrets, everything else, the General Atomics lasers that are on Navy ships, stuff like that.
And to be honest with you, the answer right now is probably no. We just don't. We're just not there yet. And this is just me. I haven't even worked on that project, but just from the general knowledge of being around this stuff, no, we're just not there yet.
But from that same article, to quote. Of equal or greater concern, hypersonics are no longer something to envision for a distant future. They are now being prototyped, tested, and refined. In short, they are basically here. U.S. weapon developers have put them on the fast track and expect to have operational hypersonic weapons in a few years, if not sooner. And this article is, let's see, what's the published date here? 2019, day before my birthday.
There you go.
Yeah, birthday news. Woohoo. 2019, 3 years ago, man. 2.5. To be fair.
Well, going back into the 80s when SDI was a thing, the Star Wars, the defense initiative, there was a lot of problems. We had think tanks, and so I've gotten invited to a few. And one of my claims to fame is not fame, but one of the claims that I'll make without revealing anything else is they were talking about putting weapon systems in space, lasers in space, and the amount of power necessary to fire a laser back then was far more than what's needed today. But to do that was almost impossible. I said, well, why put the laser in space when you can fire at, say, a mirror in space and just use the mirror to aim it wherever you want it to go? And it's like, I couldn't believe at that moment that no one had really thought of this. Like, come on, man, just hear me out. And that's why they have think tanks, is because sometimes these people get so wrapped up into whatever they're doing. But here's another tidbit that came out of the Star Wars SDI program back then. One of the subjects brought up was how to disrupt a missile, an incoming missile, without having to hit the missile. You understand the predictive path of where the missile's going to go, and you disrupt the air pattern in front of it. So if you know a missile has been launched and it's going to get to point B, or flying from A to Z, but somewhere along the trajectory is going to go through these other points, but it's going to hit, say, point E or whatever point you want to call it, that if you fire lasers at that area, especially if you fire two competing lasers from two different directions towards each other, and you create some sort of plasma effect or whatever it is you got to do for that certain area of the atmosphere to disrupt it enough, you would only have to disrupt the motion of a incoming trajectory of the object, not too much to get it to go off target. Now, granted, it's still going to do probably its job and maybe blow up over somewhere that might even be worse. But you would get into the mind of the other country knowing that they are not going to hit the targets that they intended to hit. So anything you can do to disrupt the trajectory of an object flying through space or flying through air, using whatever medium or power you have possible, is something to be done. I mean, you can go back to the V2s where they would fly next to one and literally just with their wing on their plane, pop one over and down to the ground it went. So
once again, I mean, even the technology that we had in the first Gulf War with Patriot missile system, what we have out there with other similar missile systems now, absolutely amazing. That is a physical object hitting a physical object at known trajectories and speeds that are close to each other. Now, granted, the speed of light is way, 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 way faster than hypersonic. Right. It's way faster than 10 times the speed of sound.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a wince. Beep, a hair. Literally, once again, to acquire that target, and that is what we have said. The whole reason for the speed of the Tic Tac, close to 10,000 miles an hour. Interesting how they are able to detect that.
Yeah.
With their passive radar, stuff like that. These were all tests to test these capabilities of detection. Now, once again, without being able to detect at the point of launch, we're pretty close to about, 20%, 25% left of too late.
Yeah, and when you've got a MiG-31 that's firing this thing, then you're taking a missile that is faster than anything. Period. I mean, it's hugely incredibly fast. I mean, they some of the missiles that they fired actually have gone up to 27 times the speed of sound. That is the speed of being in orbit. So these things can, and this is Russia's test. It's not our test. They've actually tested objects when we track them at 27 times the speed of sound. And that happens to be the same speed shuttle was coming in at. And, anything in low Earth orbit is going at 17.5, and that's about 27 times the speed of sound. So you don't have a lot of time to react. So if you've got a MiG-31 that's hanging off station going in orbit somewhere, not in orbit in space, but orbit, how planes orbit certain areas. And it's standing off, say 25 to say 50 miles. There's a snowball chance in hell that you're going to stop that missile coming off that thing. But the problem is that once Ukraine or any country sees that missile fired enough, they will realize at a certain point, it's really no more damaging than some of their other missiles. And in fact, it's probably less. They spend more money firing that missile, and Russia doesn't have a whole lot of money. So you're not going to see these things flying out of there like hundreds of them at a time. And that's the thing. They're relatively cheap to produce compared to some other systems that are out there. Yeah. But in the overall scheme of things, they would be far better off launching their other weapons. The problem is they need to get more accurate, and they need to stop going after these civilian targets. And that's
non-quantitative, and that's one thing. I was just showing the hypersonic missile test from a MiG. Known quantitative about the USSR, especially whenever it comes to big toys for big boys. They are not concerned with accuracy, man. No. All right, and if you want to talk about it, folks, it straight up goes to the Cold War and nuclear arms. Our weapons were 10 times more accurate. They were like, what's the point? Ours are 10 times more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So if we miss by 10 miles, we still destroy the 10 miles.
And keep in mind, they're using cluster type ammunitions. I mean, Russia is famous for using cluster ammunitions.
Yeah.
Because, they're not going to be super accurate. It's not like us where we're putting bombs down a specific elevator shaft and making it blow up on a certain floor of a certain building.
With grace. They
don't care about that. No.
And prime example, once again, go back to the cosmonaut program. We spent millions of one of my favorite quotes, and I don't even know if it's a real quote, is you already know what I'm going to say. We spent NASA spends millions of dollars to find a ballpoint pen that'll write in zero gravity. Russians use a pencil.
I love it. I love that story.
There's a little bit of truth to true. Like, strip everything non-essential. Can we put more fuel in it?
Yeah.
Strip everything non-essential. Can we put more armaments on it?
Well, Russia used to try to match us tit for tat. Whatever we would do, they would try to match us. And if you notice, it even exemplified itself in the space program because everyone saw everyone's mistake. Russia tried to cover some of them up, but we kind of know what happened. And now they really can't do that. But back in the day, when Russia was going towards Venus and we said, well, we'll send, these probes out everywhere. Once someone landed on a planet, pretty much the other competing countries said, screw it. They got there first. So we land on the moon. Russia gives up on the moon. We land on Mars. Russia really doesn't go to Mars, even though Mars is a much more viable, target to go after in the solar system than, say, Venus. They went after Venus a few times. Well,
Mercury's full of diamonds, dude. Go loot it.
Hell yeah. Here it's amazing too is the number of asteroids that are out there.
That action.
Yeah, and that's what Elon Musk got to do. He ought to go out and start, dragging some of these asteroids over here that have the stuff he needs to build the starships.
Right. Well, and once again, coming back to the hypersonic missile technology, coming back to the idea of the UAPs that were seen by the Nimitz. Being able to be detected, of course, at any point is an important thing, but the only way, and we've said this before, we've said it time and time again, the only way that you're going to be able to detect something going 10 times the speed of sound is to depend on a passive system, not on a system where you're trying to ping it. You can't ping it. By the time the return happens, like, bye-bye. It's 20 miles down the road, man.
Yeah, and talking with Kevin Day, back at that time, the actual, when he says they were dropping from the sky and it took 0.78 seconds for one to move from one to okay, he did not have that information. Just so you know this, he did not have this information. So just anyone listening to this is going to go, what is Mike talking about? Okay, well, I've talked to Kevin Day, and first off, he didn't have the security clearance to even know that his radar system had been changed. But that's not a knock against him. It's just, that's the fact of life. The thing about how that number was derived, the 0.78 seconds, was because the ballistics guys, the guys that actually track things that come in from low Earth orbit or missiles or whatever that are coming over the horizon, those are the guys that actually tracked the objects and were able to ascertain the speeds and the distances traveled over a certain amount of time. Not in other words, when they were looking at those blips coming across the screen, the only blips he says that he saw were the ones that were moving at about 100 knots that were coming down from San Clemente Island and so forth. So the system back then was a Spy 1B, and it had been upgraded, and that was the system then. That's a passive type radar system like you're talking about, but it's a phased array radar system. Those are the only type radar systems that we have to track anything moving this fast. And now you have fighter jets that now have them inside the jet. You don't have to have an Aegis cruiser out there with this system in place and then have a E-2 Hawkeye that you're bouncing signals through Link 16. So if you fast forward to today, which we are now on Spy 6 or 7 or 8, whatever the number is, you can imagine the advances that have happened since then. Precisely. So if we can track a golf ball near the moon, or a basketball, whatever the size is, it's between a golf ball and a basketball, near the moon, then why can't we track all these objects in Earth's atmosphere or in that close proximity? It's because as you go through atmosphere and you go through these cluttered areas, there's a lot more stuff in the air to try to track. That's why they have so many anomalous things on phased array radar. So phased array radar is a kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to trying to track a hypersonic missile. It will be able to track it, but at the same time, it's kind of like you would have to react to it. You'd have to kind of know, you'd have to tune, you'd have to be tuned to that. And because the way phased array radar systems work, it has to be on that mode to be able to see what you want it to see.
Now, granted, not only that, but once again, especially whenever you're talking about the Dagger system, which was just used, being a solid state, and the importance behind that, I think something that we need to consider is, regardless of the type of propellant, regardless of the type of system being used to propel, unless it's electromagnetic, something like that, where you can change the field at a moment's notice. Unless it's something like that, wherever you point that thing, that's where it's going. If you make any course correction during that flight, like I don't even know that a fly-by-wire system would be accurate enough to be able to change an aileron or something like that.
Well, it would have to be a wireless type system that would do it, because you're talking speed of light versus speed of electrons going through a wire. So when you have,
well, I'm talking about, the thing is though, you've got physical space going around this missile, man. You have air, so whenever you change something, it's going to drastically change that trajectory.
Absolutely,
so
absolutely, and that's why the design
correcting is huge, and your chance of recorrecting is almost nil.
Well, if you actually go back in time, what was the thing that was always fired up at the planes as they're flying overhead, and the planes had to steer around these things that kept blowing up near them? Remember what that was?
Chicken.
Flak. Flak. So people wear flak jackets, and you have this flak that's going up. So effectively, if you put enough flak, so to speak, in front of one of these objects as it's coming in, you would disrupt enough airflow to have it probably go somewhere. But here's the other end of that. The other argument is the object's going so fast that the amount of change that you would produce might not be enough to really, make it worthwhile to even try to hit it in the first place, which is a stupid argument, but it's still an argument.
Well, and when you're talking about impact of something going that fast, like you said, of course you could go with the whole deal, like, hey, you could make the thing out of solid metal and do some crazy damage. When you're not dropping a bomb, you're speeding a bomb. Think about the kinetic energy that's involved with these things. Well, if you drop a 1 pound ball from a plane, it's going to hit at, say, 1G as it hits the ground. It's still going to basically be a 1 pound ball. But when you accelerate this object up to 10 times the speed of sound, and your weapon payload is 500 kilograms. So that's 500 kilograms at 2.2 pounds per kilogram. That's a lot. And that's what I was going to say is, number one, yes, hitting a solid object, that's a lot. It's a huge amount. Explosive-wise or just kinetic energy-wise. However, if you were to explode that prior to impact,
that is what this actually is. It's a HE fragmentation type system that it uses.
Would actively have numerous projectiles going at that speed and faster.
And that's actually what this is.
The vacuum effect of all of those with the explosion, and an explosion happening at that speed, because the actual fire and the vacuum of it would not be isolated to the one spot. It would be traveling.
And the amount of kinetic energy at that point hitting that object would effectively, destroy the whatever the target is. It basically would obliterate it, as we saw in the video. But that's the key thing about Russia, is they've realized that it's a lot easier for them, because it's such a cash-strapped country, to make a bunch of fragmentation type weapon systems that don't have to be super accurate. Just make the carrier, whatever the missile is, make it accurate. And then once it gets near the target, just let them go. Like, even if it was just filled with BBs, I mean, it would still be a huge problem.
My God, Mike.
Yeah.
The horrifying thought just came into my head. Exactly what I was talking about earlier before I had you on. Did the Ukraine come in to maybe the whole reason that Russia came into the Ukraine and attacked these nuclear facilities was to possibly squirrel away nuclear remnants from Chernobyl, things like that, to either sell on the black market and make a dirty bomb, or some kind of technology similar to that, which would please the oligarchs, be able to be sold on the black market. No, screw the ruble. You're getting your money anyway, fella. You know what I mean? Real James Bond type stuff here. Like straight up GoldenEye scenario.
Yeah.
But good Lord have mercy, man. What if they were using this kind of technology in conjunction as a dirty bomb platform?
Well, just 1 milligram of plutonium is enough to basically wipe out the entire population of Florida.
That is such a frightening concept of delivery. Right. That goes beyond like, hey, let's put it in a cigar box underneath a bus. Right. Anything like that. Because, much like an EMP, the worst thing to do with it is explode it over the population, not in it.
Right, and that's what stopped a lot of the some of the launches that were using nuclear powered power plants to power these type probes that were sitting around the solar system and stuff. But they've proven time and time again that that's a safe way to do it. But each of our ports has plutonium and radiation detectors. As a ship comes in, these things are highly scanned. I can't say how they're scanned or what actual apparatus.
That's the thing, though, is they have no need to hit a port. Yeah,
agreed. That's just the way the system is
used today. Launched by a MiG.
Yep, and we kind of know the locations of the accessible. I'm trying to word this properly so I don't get in trouble. Of the accessible radioactive components that are necessary to build some of these things. Yeah. And obviously Iran is a classic. They're probably. I would say Iran would be the first one that would be a suspect on this than most other countries. And that's why we had such a problem with them. We actually had built a device that was in their nuclear facilities that we shut down remotely, stop them from being able to make things. That's also why we don't sell them in any ways to enrich or enhance the uranium that they have, which is obviously a lot of
got no need for that when it's sitting inside of a storage facility inside of a dead reactor from a nuclear accident 30 plus years ago.
Yeah. And essentially, Russia was in control of that reactor back then. And, then when they come in there, and of course, everybody's confused. Why are they shooting at this place? And, that's not exactly what was happening.
Like I said, though, was that the distraction to be, because like we said, the radiation spikes over Chernobyl went up before the bombing of the other nuclear plant. Just before, like a day before.
Yep.
And it was one a distraction for the other? Was it a great military prestidigitation to say, because like I said, hey, our technology's pretty accurate, man.
Yeah, but there's another factor. If you're trying to safe a reactor, if you're trying to make the reactor safe, in doing that, you're going to be moving some of mainly you're going to be moving the dirty water around, if you want to call it that.
Sure. Yeah, the heavy water,
the heavy deuterium and stuff. Yeah, the heavy water, and that's going to be moved around, and that's going to create some higher radiation spikes just by preparing, saying, okay, Russia's invading, we got to do something. And as you see that spike up, it's basically because they're having to shut down certain portions of different areas. So Chernobyl was obviously shut down to begin with, but the other reactor, I think there were 6 reactors at that one facility. They had 2 There's either only 2 or 3 that were actually online at the time. But you know, it is, you're 100% correct. And that they would utilize that as a strategy, a propaganda strategy to say, okay, let's distract them by making them think we're going to do this when we're going to do something else. You know, and Russia's going to have some huge issues over the next few weeks of strategizing of where they're going to go and what they're going to do. And I'm going to guess a city's name here. I'm going to look at a map here real quick, and I'm going to guess a name. Let's see here. So if we look at their between different cities, I would say that Poltava is going to be a new city that you're probably going to hear about. Russia either needs to strengthen those areas along that front, or they need to, or Ukraine's going to have to like retract and bring people back towards Kiev because they're going to be stretched thin. So Russia's trying to spread them out, so to speak, so they can eventually go in, because obviously Kiev is your primary target. That's the crown jewel.
Yeah.
But Ukraine is going to need to defend that area, but they're going to have to pull troops from various other cities, and obviously that if you look at Ukraine, the entire country is split almost in half. By water, we'll call them waterways, and we don't have to name them, but just say waterways. And so on one half, you've got 80% of your military, and on the other half, you have 20%. So if you pull the 20%, any of the 20% back, you're basically giving up that whole part of the country. So Russia could come in and just basically split everything down the middle, down to the water line, and say, okay, well, we'll just take this, which happens to have quite a bit of land and several key things that they're looking for, which obviously part of that is oil. So the end result is Russia is going to look at this from a profit standpoint. If the only way Putin is going to save face is if somehow he creates a better Russia because of his actions today. But the problem is that the way he's going about it.
I don't think it matters that if he builds a better Russia at all, dude.
I'm saying over time. I mean,
nope.
The way people look at it.
He crushes Russia. All that matters is he makes the oligarchs that polonium handshaked somebody to put him into office happy. That's all that matters. He has to feed the bulldog, period.
Yeah, no, that's agreed. That's actually who I was more or less referring to. Is he has to appeal. He has to make this make sense. And when he first went into office, each time, and keep in mind, Russia has gone through dramatic changes each time a new individual went into office. I mean, these people are not there for 4 years and gone. I mean, how many have we had? 5 since the early 1900s?
Yeah.
That's it. So we've had 30 whatever presidents. So that's another scenario to look at, is where is the end game? What is he trying to pull off here? But the way he's going about it, by turning the world against him, is going to have much more damning effects. And these oligarchs are going to want to be able to produce business in certain countries, and no one wants to do business with Russia right now, no matter what.
Yeah. That's
going to present that's going to be Putin's downfall, and he's done. He's toast.
And once again, the play I've been calling, I don't know, is dirty bomb of some sort, things to be traced back, whether it's the ones that were hit or Chernobyl, which I think was the, hey, looky over here while we're doing this over here. Yeah. And even if they were moving deuterium, I was just doing some quick math, and granted, folks, deuterium is heavier than water, H3O, extra hydrogen in there, folks. But,
heavy water.
But just with the general weight calculator, 150 gallons of water is 567 kilograms. You want to see something disturbing? Here's the warhead weight of the hypersonic dagger. 500 kilograms.
Yep.
So even if you were grabbing, let's just say, 100 gallons of deuterium, it would be right at the same weight, and you would be able to explode that in the atmosphere over a population and literally radiation decimate the entire place. Without using plutonium or anything like that, something that wouldn't nearly It would still make everybody sick. It would still do some crazy stuff, but it wouldn't like salt the earth. You know what I mean? It wouldn't make the place like to use a phrase, like a Chernobyl.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to nuclear fallout and stuff like this, we can trace back. We've had such a good database of being able to trace back where things are from. If someone, even deuterium, no matter where it came from, we can pretty much tell you exactly where it came from.
We can find out exactly, and that's what I'm saying is that we will see a dirty bomb somewhere. We will see something happen, and those isotopes will be traced back to one of these reactors.
And that's why it's so important to guard this stuff, because someone could come in and steal just a little bit from you, go blow it up somewhere else, and then go, we just traced this back to this other country.
And you don't even need the spent fuel rods. All you need is the water that they've been chilling in. That's
exactly.
Exactly. And all kinds of damage can be done. And like I said, artillery is pretty accurate. The odds of them accidentally hitting not just one but two nuclear plants, no, man. Yeah. That was purposefully done. That was done with intention. Mm-hmm. And they were strategically hit in a way that they could be recovered. Not only recovered for use, but that things could be recovered.
Yep, exactly.
So,
and just reiterate, from a psychological standpoint, keep in mind, most of these countries, especially a country like Russia or China or some of the larger countries, the larger militaries, they will utilize, because they know the United States is they're not going to be able to compare to us with virtually any weapon system. So they have to go out to these dirty type, weapon systems to try to use them, or to elude that they're going to use them, or at least test them so it looks like they're going to use them, to make us spend a whole bunch of money trying to come up with some sort of a defense system that can be utilized against that weapon system with the dirty bomb or whatever. So we spend all this money, time, and research and all these different things to keep defending against things that we believe that they're going to be making or producing. And in reality, sometimes we wonder, well, why doesn't the U.S. have a this or a that? Well, the reason we don't have a this or a that is because we knew that the other country, what they were doing was either so bogus or was so inaccurate that it wouldn't make any difference what we did, that they would probably have an issue with their weapon system to begin with, and why they'd even make it operational, we don't even know. Well, so we wait until there's actually a real reason to do it.
And good God, like I've said, the whole thing with ATIP, the footage, limits, all of that. My God, it's so close, especially the holographic technology, things like that. It is so close to Project Bluebeam. And to think that they would be able to sneak a dirty bomb like this and decimate a population, that would be the perfect reason for somebody or something to come in and intervene and go, whoa, 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 not again. Whoa, 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 not again.
We could broadcast effectively by exciting the molecules of air and making those molecules actually into a speaker. Those type of systems. Keep in mind, when you go way back in time when gunpowder was first invented, and the reasons for its use was to amuse and to scare. It was amused to scare.
It was used by the magicians. It was used in in magic tricks and stuff like that. It was a novelty. It was there to scare off evil demons.
Exactly. And the Chinese, effectively, that's where gunpowder comes from, is they would load these into rockets and explode them over a community just to scare them. They had no way of figuring out that they could actually, weaponize this into a way that would really do something. So, you fast forward, obviously that's totally different today, but if a similar, there's so many other technologies that can be utilized that would be as visually stunning.
Shock and awe takes on a whole new level when you are
talking about right over downtown Russia. Just put a hologram right over downtown Russia and say, everyone, we're the United States, blah, blah, blah. Whatever they want to say.
Not just one that can be seen, but one that can be touched.
Yeah.
One that can be touched.
Have some haptic feedback from the thing. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I mean, this is the technology that we actively have, folks. We're not playing about it. It is active, touchable, 3D holograms, things like that.
Yes, here.
It's pretty phenomenal. And on large scale, even in small scale, I mean, I've got some small scale stuff coming up on the screen here in just a second, but.
Well, pull up the globe. There should be a globe on there that DARPA had. I don't know if it's actually released yet, but that globe, I was there before they added the ability to reach up and touch it and spin it. They were using lasers that would track your hand motions and stuff. But now, which I haven't seen this version of it, I just saw the globe. The globe was 18 feet, I think, in diameter, and you could zoom and all kinds of stuff. It was like having Google Earth, but as a hologram. It was just really freaking cool. So, but now that they have the haptic type feedback, is that when you apparently, which I haven't done yet, I'll openly admit it, when you touch it, you get the tactile feedback, meaning that you could sense by pressure on your hand from it's weird how it does it. It explodes.
It's not weird how it does it. It's not, because when we actively just had the conversation with Kathleen Martin from MUFON this last week, man, where she was talking about physicists that she talked with. How many times have we had the conversation privately, Mike, about it? We're sharing electron shells, man. Yeah. Anything that you were physically touching by all means of physics is not physically there. It is a repulsion of electrons.
Right. And we should pass right through each other if we wanted to.
It is 90% empty space. All you have to have is frequency and phase in order for them to interact or pass through each other. Go read The Flash. Experiment. Go read some DC comics, folks. That's
or just watch Philadelphia Experiment. That's how sailors end up inside the decks of ships too in Philadelphia.
Oh, dude, that's a creepy scene. But that is frozen in my mind from when I was like 10 years old to this day. But it's real. It's real technology, and we're at a point now where we can, we have pictures of atoms. My God, IBM spelled their name in atoms. That was when I was in 8th grade. So we have had this technology for decades. We have been able to cross this barrier. We have been able to manipulate this barrier. We are now at the point of the Alcubierre warp drive, where the warp bubble was it, at least there, the conditions for the warp bubble were there.
Right. Hey, you said it the right way. I love it. Awesome. That's perfect.
And we're already talking about matter being created from light. We're already talking about holograms that you can see, feel. It's not far off from saying that there will be some kind of world-changing, world-shaking attack. That something from beyond, be it extraterrestrial or be it religious, would come about and steal people together to bring about that means of control.
Well, and here's the thing that should bring us all together if we really think about it. I remember when I was on Breslow's show and he was talking about, wouldn't it be neat if we found out that, because we were talking about exoplanets, he said, wouldn't it be neat if we found out that one was nearby? And I said, well, he's like, what's the nearest star? And I told him, I said, Proxima Centauri actually has a planet that actually is in the Goldilocks zone and is probably somewhat Earth-like. And he's just totally floored by it. And if you think about how long it would take to get an object to get there and back, they're talking about making these microsatellites that are light riders and what have you, that can attain various portions or various percentages of the speed of light to get them back within our lifetimes. Here's the technology. Yeah, here's the technology gap that everyone has to take into account. If we today can get an object that would go from here to, say, Proxima Centauri at 10% of the speed of light, should we build it if we have knowledge that within maybe 3 or 4 years, we will be able to attain 50% of the speed of light? So you have that quandary of that, because that reduces the amount of time to get there by 70% or whatever the percent number.
Even if you achieve 10% of the speed of light, you can get there within a lifetime.
But would you build that knowing that in 2 or 3 years we will be able to probably achieve 50%? So do you put the money into the one that can do the 10%, or do you wait and put the money in the one that you know can probably do 30 or 40%, or whatever the percentage is better? That's the quandary that we are in right now, because technology can change so fast. Back in the day, we didn't have that issue because we knew that any technology changes were decades to come into play. Now we're talking about months or years. Within a few years or months, we would have such a drastic technology change that we might not need to invest in this one and go to the next one. That's why people look at companies and go, well, why did they stop investing in this company when it showed so much promise?
And that is exactly what we have been saying, is that the next jump of technology, the only way to explain it is through disclosure. To say that we either found, I doubt seriously you will hear that we have contact with, but at the least you will hear that we found, we recovered, what have you. We shot down, maybe doubtful. But we recovered something years ago, and this is where some of this technology came from. And we've given it to private corporations like IBM, things like that. And, literally what you see in Terminator 2, where they open up a vault and it's like, yep, here's the hand. Here's the microprocessor. That's what led to the computers we have. Things like that. Exactly what Philip Corso said before he passed. That kind of stuff. I definitely think that once again, the disclosure and the whole reason for the UAPs, all that is, and even this is the fact of the hypersonic missiles, this, folks, is the fact that it's the only way that we will be able to explain the next leap in technology that comes to stop things like hypersonic missiles.
Right.
It's the only way. Pardon my conspiracy filters on my eyes while I say that. But
no conspiracy filter necessary. It's what's happening. It's not even a question. I mean, you know me. I'm a debunker. I'm a this. I'm a that, and all this other stuff.
You're a believing skeptic like I am.
Absolutely,
and a purposeful skeptic like I am.
And I want to believe in so many other things. It's like a lot of people say, "Well, you don't believe in UFOs. You don't believe in aliens." I said, "No, I believe in them." And they're like, "Well, why can't you accept this?" I said, "Because when I do finally accept it, I want to make double damn certain that it actually is what." Because you and I have both been so disappointed before, where we saw one thing and said, "Wow, that's awesome," and then come to find out it's a balloon or it's a this or it's a that.
Well, and like Carl Sagan said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof.
Yeah, exactly.
And even myself, as an experiencer of the paranormal, even I would say, at least in my frame of reference, an experiencer of the divine. My realm of proof is greater than the average bear.
Exactly. And I'm an experiencer too. I have my UFO experience with my mom. I've got my ghost experience with my mom again. And I think there's a common denominator here.
You've got your military experience and your intelligence experience and your being read into things experience that tell you something stinks on ice.
Yeah.
Something just don't add up.
It doesn't. And then you have to wonder, because when they start coming back and they start bringing in, guys, that have been out for a while, and they're like, okay, it's something has happened or something's happening to where technology from 10, 20, 30 years ago, just like the time I went to SpaceX and helped you with that object I told you I helped with. So, when you look at the recycling of technology, so if technology is moving fast enough, let's take disclosure out of the question. If technology is moving fast enough to where a person who doesn't really pay attention to things, you go to Best Buy once every 2-3 years, right? And this guy goes into Best Buy after 2-3 years. And I'm saying that because I'm looking across the street at a Best Buy.
My God, I haven't been there in a decade, literally.
is why. It's like we can get it all online, right? So when somebody walks into the store and they see all this crazy stuff, it's like, wow, I never even knew there was a need for this. And then here's this thing that solves all these problems, what have you. And your mind starts to wonder, is the disclosure such a soft disclosure that we're not even going to realize that it even happened?
I think it's going to be such a shift that we have to realize it's happening.
But if technology is changing so fast, if technology keeps changing as rapid as it is,
what's coming to stop things like this?
Yeah,
the technology that it will commonly take to alleviate the fear of something like this is something on a different level, Mike.
Well, it's like the Israelis; they live with the Iron Dome. They have that there. We don't have that. We have detection systems, but we don't have an Iron Dome. So all of the money that this country has spent, wouldn't you look towards Israel and go, wow, that might have been a better way to spend our money. But who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who knows?
And, I mean, we'll see.
I mean, we're a much bigger country. So I get that.
We're a much bigger country. And once again, to bring it back before we cut it off,
pew, pew.
It's a pew pew. Choo 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 choo. Yeah.
I'm your comic relief.
That's it. God, I miss you, man.
Hey, you, brother.
We need to hang out sometime. Oh, actually,
Absolutely.
I'm going to be in Florida for 14 days.
When?
Coming up in June. Or no, May.
I'll be in Phoenix.
My
probably.
God, man, if the dude that booked me for the gig is listening, he's going to be like, June, you better check your calendar, son.
Man.
But yeah, one of my annual events is back, so I'll be in the Orlando area. We definitely need to hook up, my man.
I definitely. I may be going back.
We'll have some sushi and scotch and cause some trouble.
That'll work. If I'm still here, by all means. If not, I'm heading to Phoenix probably here before too long, and I will be passing by you.
I've got a show in Phoenix, all kinds of stuff. But let's definitely keep in touch off air, as we always do. But
let's keep in touch on here. I think people would like to listen to that.
Well, and we need to definitely, once again, as we always say, make this much more regular, which we have. This is already your second appearance on Curious Realm.
We could have like Turber Tuesdays.
But the show is every Tuesday, Mike.
I know.
We could have the Turber report.
Yeah, there you go.
If you want to put together a Turber report, like a little 3-minute report about stuff going on in that kind of community, things like that, and send it to me from 5x5 News, we'll air it every week, man.
You know what? That's a good idea. I'll piece something together for you.
It'll get you motivated to doing more stuff for 5x5 News. Which, before we let you go, shameless self-promotion time, Michael. Go.
Absolutely. If you want to see what I do, which the last few months has been a lot, but behind the scenes, you've got to check me out, 5x5 News. Just search for 5x5 News or head over to YouTube, youtube.com/5x5 News US. That's how you can basically find me. Also on Twitter is 5x5 News. Basically, we're the only 5x5 News out there, so just do that, and you'll see some of the stories that we're staying up on. So if you're interested in Tiger King, the UFOs, Afghanistan, or what Tiger King, whatever else I'm working on, by all means, even talk to me. I mean, I'm not hard to get a hold of, and sometimes I like talking to people just out of the clear blue. So
yeah, you don't exactly hide.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You're not a hidden individual. You are pretty public. You're pretty out there. You're like me. You're loud and proud. That's why I was saying you needed to listen to the 38 Special song.
Oh yeah.
Stone Cold Believer. I think it will be an anthem for you, just like it is for me. It's now my hype song. It's my hype song. If I'm gonna walk onto stage to something, I'd love to walk onto stage to
not let the body hit the floor. The body's at the floor.
That's me right there. That's me. No. I would say something along the lines of like Alan Parsons Project, but unfortunately the Chicago Bulls just snatched those rights. Ain't nobody ever using it again. But Stone Cold Believer, straight up. Go listen to it. Great lyrics,
Absolutely.
folks.
I'll do the lyrics version so I can read that for you, buddy.
Thanks so much, my friend, as always, for coming on as a Minuteman on a moment's notice. All I ever have to do is drop a line, and it's funny that I did, because I dropped a line a couple days ago like, hey, I'm going out of town for a week. Got to have a pre-recorded episode. You want to get together? I know you're doing some Tiger King stuff that we've talked about. I know you've done some Ukraine stuff that we've talked about. Let's get together and talk. And you were like, okay. And then literally between the time that we talked and the time that we hit record,
just a couple hours.
Things went hypersonic.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
And I was like, I literally texted you hashtag gear change.
Yep.
You know, because like if that ain't a grind of the gears and a pivot on the road, that's a bat turn, son. Is what that is.
That's definitely something new that people weren't expecting. I don't think many people were expecting
that's like
that.
Deploy the bat chute. You know.
Sure.
So, Mike, thanks as always, my man. Take care of yourself. Keep yourself safe. Keep your head on a swivel while you're out there. Hold the line while we close things out. While you're online checking everything out from 5x5 News, everybody, make sure to stop on by the Curious Realm. Curious Realm is the home of the Curious Realm, curiousrealm.com. Stop on by curiousrealm.com/store. We have an events page up as well. The store is where you can get all of the books from our guests, everything else, fantastic stuff, especially the books by Kathleen Marden. I fully intend for everybody attending the MUFON conference to buy an additional copy of her book and have her sign it and give it away and a drawing at the MUFON conference. So make sure to stop on by there. Check out our events page. That is where you will get to see all of the events that we are sponsoring, that we will be doing live streams from, where you can tune in on curiousrealm.com/live. Take care, everybody. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And remember, stay curious. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Curious Realm. Stay tuned for more guests, forbidden topics, and hidden truths. Download the official Curious Realm app and view the Knowledge Vault on our website, curiousrealm.com. Follow us on social media by searching Curious Realm. Curious Realm is available on your favorite podcast services, as well as YouTube, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV through the APR TV app, available on all app markets. Curious Realm is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more great content or to become a sponsor of Curious Realm or other podcasts, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com today. Thanks for listening. Stay curious. And remember, the other side is always watching.